If you have a smart speaker, you have access to the entire world of NPR and St. Louis Public Radio. All the latest news and all the captivating stories. Activate our voices with yours by telling your smart speaker to play St. Louis Public Radio.
After weeks of speculation and conjecture, lawmakers from all sides of the political spectrum are eagerly awaiting a report on Governor Eric Greitens' conduct. It's a document that could be critical for the political future of the GOP chief executive. One of the people that's taking an especially close interest into the governor's future is Senator Jamilah Nasheed. The St. Louis Democrat joins us next on Politically Speaking to talk about the governor's woes and the rest of the legislative session in 2018. Let's hit the music.
This is the Politically Speaking podcast, a candid conversation with the Show Me State's biggest political newsmakers.
I'm Jason Rosenbaum.
And I'm Joe Mannies.
That's Eric Greitens, Navy SEALs running for governor, and I'm really glad to be on with you, Jason and Joe.
I'm going to push back on these regulators.
I'm doing this for the people.
I was encouraged along the way, not just by my family, but by a lot of teachers and professors, and knew when I was in college that I would run for office someday.
We're very excited about the prospect of having some more free market solutions.
Even though after the conversation, I still might not agree.
We want our listeners to get a real sense of what drives these people.
They're actually people with a story to tell. And welcome to Politically Speaking. I'm your host, Jason Rosenbaum, a reporter with St. Louis Public Radio. Joining me in studio today is
colleague Joe Mannies.
And joining us for the lucky fourth time, I believe she is the second guest we ever had on the show back in 2013, but it has been almost 3 years since she's been on the show. And
That's stunning.
You had to share it with, that rascal former House Speaker Steve Tilley. we are delighted to have on the senator that actually represents St. Louis Public Radio in the Missouri Senate.
Jamilah Nasheed, Senator for the 5th Senatorial District. Thanks for having me on.
And just remind our listeners the general boundaries of the 5th Senatorial District.
Well, we go north all the way to Broadway and south all the way to the river. Everything east of Kings Highway, approximately.
So we're here to talk about a lot of very crucial and important issues, some of which are issues-based, but the topic we're going to talk about first is the future of the governorship.
I'm still looking at you wondering, why has it been 3 years?
I know.
Well, hey, you've been in almost most of many of my legislative features. In fact, one of my editors, not my current one, had banned me on using you for a month or two. but it's
sounds a little bit better.
Well, it's because you're very good. You say what's on your mind.
So I want to talk about the governor, because you were one of the first Democrats, if not the first Democrat, to call for his resignation after it was revealed he had an extramarital affair before he was governor.
Yes, which he admitted to on the night of his State of the State address in January.
I want to just let you explain why you feel like the governor shouldn't be in office anymore, and what was kind of going through your mind when this news broke.
Well, when I first heard about it, I was appalled, taken aback. And I was like, oh, wow. I mean, this is really, really going to hurt the state of Missouri's image, okay? And so, I said, well, the best thing for him to do, meaning the governor, Greitens, is to just step aside, and allow for the state of Missouri to begin the healing process. Because, this was all over the news. It made national news.
Yes.
Even
it still does.
Yeah. And so people have resigned for far less offenses as the one the governor, was involved in, okay? And so I'm saying, do the right thing for the betterment of the state so that we can take this black eye and begin to heal it and move forward. And I just thought it was the best thing to do for the state of Missouri is for him to resign.
Why do you think, just from your perspective, everybody's got their own view of this, and only Governor Greitens knows, why he's taking the path he's taking. Why do you think he has declined to do so, even though actually most of the most vocal people in the Capitol calling for his resignation, most of those are Republicans.
Oh, absolutely.
Fellow Republicans. Why do you think that he's decided to try to stick it out?
I don't know if it's because of the Navy SEAL mentality that you just keep going and going and going and you just never give up, or if it's just he has this self-interest of wanting to continue to go and thinking that at some point the wave will pass and that he can get through it. I think he's self-serving.
As Joe alluded to, and as we've tried to hammer home many times, some of the biggest critics of the governor since this situation unfolded have been Republicans. I think some Republicans feel like Greitens, as you mentioned, hurts the image of their party. Others have really disagreed with his actions even before this occurred.
Yeah, I mean, our previous guest, Senator Eigel, I mean, that was his point, was that we weren't getting along with him before, and this just made it worse.
Because I remember talking with you before he was inaugurated, and I think that you were somewhat optimistic about him because he was from the city of St. Louis, and I think that even though he's a Republican, when you live somewhere, you kind of understand
he used to
the
be
problems.
a Democrat too, though.
That's
That's
fair.
why I felt a little. I said, okay, well, maybe he's just going into the Republican Party simply because he wants to climb the ladder. Hoping that he still had Democratic views.
So like a Republican who runs as a Democrat in the city of St. Louis because never mind. But continue, Senator.
Yeah, and so I think though right now we are seeing a governor who has really, really been wounded, okay? I don't see how he comes back. Before this even occurred, the Republican Party, they were upset with the way that he was trying to govern with a heavy hand, okay? He would literally come down to the Senate office, different Senate officers, and say to them, this is how I want you to vote. And then one senator, he said, listen, you cannot even vote the way you want to vote because you don't even know what this bill does. I mean, it was that bad. How he would talk to elected officials, and that whole outsider mentality wasn't really working with a lot of the Republicans, and that's why there was a lot of pushback with the governor. When it came to different policies he was wanting to push.
And I want to hone in on one particular issue, and I've asked this of the last two senators. Around the time that word of the governor's affairs started circulating, the governor engineered a freeze of the state low-income housing tax credit.
But that was already after he had a fight over the state education board.
Yes. But
put that in context
I'm just gonna lay it out here. I was first tipped off about this situation right around the time the LIHTC episode was going on,
which is
in November, and I think there's been a lot of conjecture that this entire reveal of the affair is retribution for engineering that. You were one of the people who was most outspoken against the governor's action on low-income housing tax credit.
Yeah, I've been fighting low-income housing, fighting for low-income housing.
Is there any truth to that? Is this been revealed because people were upset about the low-income housing tax credit situation?
No, I don't see that. I don't know. I don't know how it came out. Yeah. All I know is it's outright. It's out of the box. The jack in the box is out of the box, and it can't go back in.
Well,
but I don't know who leaked it and why it was leaked.
Yeah.
Well, it had been circulating among some people for 2 years.
Yes.
But in both parties. But it was a matter of anybody willing to say anything, or is anybody willing, But my point being is that I've had a number of Republicans tell me that there was a lot of, in other words, a lot of the enemies he made, not just on low-income housing,
yes,
but on a variety of issues, that then when things started to bubble up, were more than willing to jump ship or, go after him because they were already upset with him.
And I just mentioned that particular episode because if you listen to the attorney of the ex-husband, Al Watkins says that there was a lot of reporters being called in the month of December, which happened to be the time when the MHDC made the decision. I will just ask now, let's take aside the fact of whether it was retribution, because as I've said on previous shows, it's the governor's own fault that he engaged in this behavior and allowed his enemies to use this against him. My question is now, especially as somebody who is a low-income housing tax credit proponent, is one of the reasons you're asking him to resign because you feel that Lieutenant Governor Parson would reverse that decision and would and that would be a better policy outcome for people in your district?
That's not why I'm asking him to resign, even though I do believe that we will have a friend with Lieutenant Governor Parson, being that he is friendly to low-income housing tax credits and historic tax credits, even brownfield tax credits. However, I called for his resignation again simply because people had to step down for far less problems and not crimes, but far less issues that he's dealing with. I mean, take my good friend
John Deal.
Yeah.
Who you were pretty close with.
Yeah, I mean,
the former House Speaker.
And the former House Speaker. Those guys, they stepped down for just texting.
Right.
Okay, now here you have a man that admitted, to affairs outside of his marriage. And not only that, now you have 4 investigations occurring at the same time. You have the investigation coming from the prosecuting attorney's office here. Rumor has it that there's an investigation with the federal agencies. You have an investigation with his own party, Josh Hawley, and there's another one with the House.
With the House.
Yeah,
yes.
I do want to
So
ask.
I mean, with all that going on, I mean, that's way too much for a governor to be able to have to deal with, and while at the same time trying to govern.
Well, and that's what I want to kind of segue into, because really what's more important for the average person, while the other is kind of a sideshow, although there is the legitimate question of whether or not anything illegal happened, but still, what's the impact of legislation that's being considered? Now, at least in the Senate, you guys are basically waiting to see what this House panel does before you guys have any voice, official voice, in the Greitens matter. But how does this affect, let's say, legislation being heard, bills being passed or not passed, or discussion about what issues are going to be taken up? How does the controversies affect all that?
Well, you saw it for yourself, Joe. When he did the State of the State, he talked about going throughout the 114 counties, pushing his tax agenda, right? Where has he been? I don't know how many counties he's gone to thus far. So that there alone will show you that there's been a negative impact overall. We haven't heard or seen him on the House side or the Senate side since that occurred. Okay.
And I don't think he's talked to reporters at all since the indictment.
The budget. The budget. Everything, even with higher ed, the House said, no, we're not giving you what you want. They totally strapped his higher ed budget. And they're saying, no, we're starting over from scratch. So, it's really impacting him a great deal. But the Senate is still moving.
Yeah, because one of the things I was wondering, and it's kind of a similar, different, I'm going to emphasize, it's different from what's going on in Washington, but there's one common element. When the chief executive is under fire, and people from their own party are disagreeing, in the legislative branch, are disagreeing with what they're doing, and so then they sort of ignore what the chief executive is advocating or doing, or saying, oh, that's just him being him. So, my point being, does it then set the stage for whoever is the next governor having less impact in the General Assembly, because legislative leaders have gotten used to running their own show?
That's right.
I'm just wondering.
I think that, you still have a lieutenant governor that presides over the dais.
Yeah, but
every day.
Yeah, but he or she doesn't vote except in a tie.
No, but the relationship is still there.
Okay.
And so you have a lieutenant governor who relationship with the legislative body is intact right now. And I don't think that you're going to see what you are seeing on the federal level.
So that's actually a great segue to our first clip, which is from Glenn Cage. He's a union leader that I talked with at Democrat Days in Hannibal. And what this clip is about to express is one of the reasons you haven't seen a lot of Democrats join your call for the governor to resign, and it has a lot to do with Lieutenant Governor Mike Parsons' potential effectiveness.
Right now, with the current situation that our governor is in, most of the Republicans don't want anything to do with him. They don't want to work with him. So they're not pushing a lot of legislation. They don't want him to have any kind of opportunities to succeed. One of the concerns that I have from my perspective is that if he's gone, is this going to open the floodgates for the next guy to come in, and he could be just as anti-labor. I mean, he's not been friendly to labor throughout his career, and I don't hardly see that changing once he assumes the role of governor. So the longer Greitens is in there and the Republicans don't want to work with them, the better it is for us.
It's Greitens, by the way. He misspoke, but I've heard that argument from other Democrats.
Yeah, that's weak, though. That's a weak argument.
Explain why.
I believe it's a weak argument simply because right now the Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the governor's mansion. They have the supermajority. They can get whatever they want done now, regardless of who's there, okay, or who's not there. This guy right here, Greitens, he hurts the party in a major way right now. He's hurting the party in a major way right now. And the Democrats would like to keep him there for the sole purpose of running the House Dems on the backs of what's happening with the Greitens issue. So I see where he's going. But that's not the issue. The issue is let's keep Greitens in, okay, so that we can continue to bang on him, associate him with other Republicans who's running against Democrats, and see if we can win some seats.
But you don't agree with that. You think that Greitens should go. So you don't agree with that strategy.
No, I do not.
Because you feel like I'm getting the sense that you feel like there are higher reasons to get rid of him than just political expedience.
Moral reasons, okay? Integrity, okay? I mean, those are the type of things that I believe, I think we should be able to begin to look at and say, this is why you should leave.
Now, one of the things that bringing up this labor guy's perspective, though, there is one of the big issues that's kind of looming is there is that referendum that labor got all the signatures to force on the right to work law that was passed last session. That will be on the November ballot unless the General Assembly, the Republican leaders in the General Assembly, get the votes to move it to August. And the Republicans are still debating over whether or not they want to do that. Referendums are the one case where the governor has no role in what election it's at. There's been some speculation that all this Greitens stuff has kind of slowed down Republicans looking at that. There are others who say, no, they can act even on the last day in May, before the session ends, to do it. I'm just interested in what you're hearing and what you think may or may not happen on that. And then there's some other labor issues that are already being going through the or anti-labor issues, you want to put it that way, that are going through the General Assembly. I'm just interested in your take on that, since labor could end up being a big behind-the-scenes issue going into November even.
Yeah, I do believe that, there's a scare within the Republican Party to put it on the November ballot, simply because they know that if right to work is on the November ballot, it works in favor of Clara McCaskill.
So they want to move it to...
So they're going to try to do all they can to be able to put it put it towards the August.
Right.
But aren't they also pushing to put another piece of legislation, a pro-right to work piece of legislation on the November ballot? I mean, wouldn't that kind of counter that? I mean, I know there's some efforts on that from the Republican.
Well, even if they decide to do that, let's say hypothetically speaking, they decide to put that right to work.
Yeah, so you'd have
a lot of Republicans. You have a lot of union boys and girls that are Republicans, okay, and they are really, really pissed off right now at the Republican Party, which many of them actually voted for Donald Trump. Okay, so they're really upset.
In Eric Greitens. I have heard lots of anecdotal evidence that union people voted for Eric Greitens, even though Eric Greitens was on record dozens of times saying he would sign right to work.
Well, because they weren't paying attention.
Yes.
They liked the gun ad.
But continue.
Absolutely, that's what happened. So, I believe that at the end of the day, the Republicans who voted for Donald Trump, as well as Greitens, are now fed up, and they're saying enough is enough. We don't care what pro-right to work bill you put on the ballot. We're going with the labor movement.
So how does this affect? I mean, you've been one of the more outspoken supporters of Senator McCaskill. I mean, for months. I mean, I interviewed you last summer for a story on this. So, I mean, kind of how do you see some of this playing out? What are you going to be doing? I know there's some, splits among African-American Democrats, not on whether to support her, but whether or not they think she's doing enough in the urban areas. I'm interested in your take on what's going on, because she did get jumped on for a letter she was trying to get some African-American politicians to sign a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. Well, I think we can all do more in our respective districts. Someone may say, "Oh, Senator, you're not on Cherokee as much as you are in the Central West End, or you're not in North St. Louis as much as you are on the downtown area, in the downtown area." So I mean, we all can be accused of kind of neglecting at some point our prospective districts. Okay, however, I don't think that should be the conversation right now, especially at a time when there's a possibility of the Democratic Party losing the Senate. 2 seats away from losing the Senate, and you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, you mean gaining the Senate, but they have to keep everything they have.
I don't think they can win the Senate without McCaskill being reelected.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah, right. Winning the Senate, right? So if McCaskill lose,
then the Democrats have no hope of taking the Senate.
It's over. Right? And so I'm saying, let's look at the bigger picture here, because everything that Donald Trump touches is anti-health, anti-veteran, anti-education. I mean, we don't need another senator carrying the water for Donald Trump's poor policies.
Well, this brings into the recent Kansas City Star article, which I think you were quoted in. And this came a few months after Joe wrote an article, which I edited, about the potential conflicts between African-American leaders and Senator McCaskill. First of all, were you asked to sign that letter basically condemning Bruce Franks' comments that was mentioned in that article?
Well, it didn't really condemn it. It just tried to highlight what she...
Were you asked to sign that letter?
I don't know what letter you're talking about.
Okay, that was it was...
What letter was it? I mean, what did the letter say?
Okay, well, what the letter said...
the answer is no.
Well, what the letter said was kind of trying to promote what she had been doing for urban residents, including African Americans. They were trying to get African American leaders to sign it. It wasn't technically anti-Bruce Franks.
Okay.
I mean, and she and Franks have talked off and on, but he has been critical of his contention has been, while he has said he would support her, this goes back to last fall.
I'm going to read.
He was saying she wasn't doing enough.
But he has a right to feel the way he feels, and no one should ever negate that feeling when it comes to African Americans and the Democratic Party.
Yeah, and I want to give a little bit more context, and this is from the Kansas City Star article. And I'm reading this verbatim. African-American leaders in Missouri are frustrated with the way they see as Senator Claire McCaskill's lackluster engagement with minority voters. Frustrated enough that they refused to sign a letter pushing back against comments made last month by Bruce Franks, prominent black activist and state legislator from St. Louis, who called on McCaskill to show up and earn the support of minority voters in her state. In response to Franks' comments, McCaskill had asked African-American elected officials in Kansas City and St. Louis to sign the letter. Among those who were approached were Representative Cleaver, Lacey Clay, Gail McCann Beatty, and all of them declined to sign the letter, and the letter never went out.
And to be fair to Representative Franks, what he had been saying that stuff, as I said. I mean,
for weeks, not months.
For months. I mean, I had interviewed him in October for my feature where he spoke to a whole bunch of Democrats in Richmond Heights and said the same thing.
So
I think that but this is what I believe.
So he's been consistent. Is my point.
Not a month or 6 months out and start griping about where have you been. I mean, 2 years or a year out. It's the conversation that those conversations are supposed to be had immediately after she got elected. Okay, when are you coming here? What are you going to do for the African American community? Not 6 months out before the next election. I mean, we cannot continue to be reactionaries. Okay, we have to be able to hold the Democratic Party feet to the fire, right? immediately after they get elected.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think is the prospects for McCaskill at this point?
It's going to be an uphill battle. It's going to be an uphill battle. But I truly believe at the end of the day that the Democratic Party is going to turn up the volume in a way that they've never turned the volume up before to keep that seat.
We'll go back to politics.
And I'm going to work extremely hard.
We'll go back to politics near the end of the show, but I do want to shift back to what is kind of left undone in the legislative session. One of them is a potential sizable tax cut that's being pushed by a number of your Republican colleagues.
It's different than what the governor was pushing, but yeah.
We had Senator Bill Eigel, a Republican from Weldon Spring, on our show last week. He talked about one of the reasons why he was pursuing this route and also pushed back against Democratic criticisms that it was going to negatively impact social services and education. Here is Senator Eigel from last week's Politically Speaking.
I think it's irresponsible to have ballooning budgets increasing every single year to record levels, taking more and more out of the paychecks of Missouri workers every single year without some sort of restraint and without some sort of relief to go to those family households. I think it's ridiculous that, we have a tax code here in Missouri that, unlike places like Texas and Florida and Tennessee that are growing rapidly in terms of their population, our growth is stagnant. The reason our growth is stagnant is because we charge you 6% to do business here, and those states don't charge you any percent on your income. So I think that that's incredibly irresponsible when clearly there are other states doing business in a better manner.
So you're going to hear a lot of those arguments when this bill comes back up for final passage. It's not even really certain, though, whether Senator Eigel's bill will be the mechanism to cut taxes or somebody else's. What's going to be your mindset when this comes to the floor again?
Well, I've always been opposed to any tax cut bill that Republicans push because at the end of the day, I don't believe it's in the best interest of the constituents here in the state of Missouri. I don't think you can compare Texas to St. Louis when it comes to reducing the income taxes, individual income taxes.
Well, because the
Texas
three
is
states,
all state.
Yeah, the three states that he mentioned, Texas, Florida, and Tennessee, all three have no income tax.
Right.
Now, I did some stories on this a couple years ago. They have a lot of other taxes to replace it. And
Texas is a big all state.
Yeah, correct. I was just going to.
You don't need that. You don't need that income tax.
And Texas also has oil, and it also has a very diversified economies depending on where you go.
Yeah, but they have a lot of heavier local taxes on other things.
Right. But continue, Senator.
So I think that at the end of the day, we saw what happened with with Kansas City.
Or at Kansas.
I'm sorry, Kansas.
Yeah.
And when they got rid of their corporate income taxes, now they're going back to repeal it and say that that was the biggest disaster for Kansas.
Yeah, they repealed it a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Continue.
Yeah, and so now here you have St. Louis and the state of Missouri wanting to go down that same road, which I don't think is going to work for us. I think we're going to lose revenue in a way that we've never lost revenue before.
Now, actually, when this airs, a story that I just was finishing up will have also been airing, which has to do with the impact on the current budget of the tax cuts that are already in place on the state and federal level. The state is losing about $220 million a year. This is the calendar year from the state tax cuts that were approved in 2014 and that finally began to go into effect in 2017, and then also close to $60 million from the federal tax cuts. So the state tax cuts, the initial state tax cuts, because they're finally going into effect, are cutting about $160 million in 2018 from what the state is taking in. Now, what is intriguing to me, the kicker is the state's income has to increase by $150 million for that cut for the next level. But that cut actually amounts to more than that. So in other words, like if your state income goes up $150 million, those tax cuts go into effect, they actually are taking $160 million. And this is separate from the federal. So each year that goes into effect, there's another round of that. So there's a addition effect. So I'm not saying that's good or bad, but my point is that's still playing out, plus these other corporate tax cuts that were approved about the same time that ended up being bigger than the state had thought. So this is before this new round of tax cuts are approved. I mean, is there much discussion about this?
No,
about the fact the state's already losing money because, and I'm not saying it's good or bad, but the state's income is going down.
It's bad because I mean you don't reduce your general revenue without finding a way to increase it in some other way or manner, and they haven't been able to do that. What they're looking to do is cut. Social service programs. Higher ed was hit. You saw what the governor did with higher ed. I mean, it was a drastic cut to higher ed.
Now the House has restored some of that, but they had to cut a deal with the schools as far as how much higher their
and you're still on the Senate Appropriations Committee, right?
Correct.
Do you think that the restoration of those higher education cuts will survive when it goes to the Senate budget process?
Oh, absolutely.
And explain why.
Well, because the Senator Brown and the Probst chair on the House side, they've gotten together and they said, listen, we're not going to hold the line for the governor. We're going to work together collectively for the betterment of higher ed. And so they are talking and they're working with each other. And I think that's how you get back to the 9%.
Yeah, and it's a big deal for your district because I actually interviewed the president of Harris Stowe State University last year, and they got cut by 10%, which was, I don't know, $1 million or $2 million, which may not seem like a lot, but when you look at the fact their entire budget is like very small, it was pretty devastating for a school that small. So the fact that they could see more cuts would probably hurt them even more.
The doors were closed.
Yeah. It would be even, and then that's just for one small school. We're not talking about bigger ones too.
Well, and of course, if you recall, last session there was this effort to try to protect some of these services that low-income elderly receive to try to keep them in their homes as opposed to them going into nursing homes, and then the Medicaid costs go up, and actually the state has less control over that. I know there's been, there was a temporary solution. The governor rejected it for various reasons. I'm not going to get into the details, but nothing was done. I know that's being debated now a bit.
And the Senate seemed to have a better, more consensus on this issue than the House.
But how do you deal with that if you still got all this tax cut stuff going on?
And I think that's what they're going to have to figure out. I don't see how you deal with it in a positive. Because if you're constantly cutting taxes and you're saying that you want to keep seniors in their homes, it just does. You want to make sure that individuals, the seniors that are in the nursing homes, they are taken care of and they can stay there. I don't see how it happens.
So my point is, where do you guys go from here? Especially with here we are. We're just about 5 weeks left in the session.
Well, if I was a part of the Republican Party, I can tell you where we go from here. Right now, they're controlling the show here, and they're not talking to us about what they're looking to do until they do it. And so we have to just wait and see what they bring forward, and if we don't like it, we push back against it, and we fight it.
Now, there was a bunch of abortion bills, abortion stuff that just passed the House that now is going to be looming in the session. And that social issue always tends to
bubble up during an election year.
Yeah, bubble up during an election year. And sometimes things get shut down, you know what I mean, which affects other bills.
Yeah.
What do you think that's going to happen
I haven't heard a lot about a PQ this session. I don't know if they are looking to bring forth the PQ signatures.
And by the way, for our listeners who don't know what a PQ is, it's called previous question. It basically kills a filibuster.
That's right.
And it's only on that state level because Aaron Burr killed it on the federal level.
Thank you for the Hamilton reference, Joe.
Well, no, but it's true. It had nothing to do with Hamilton. That was before he shot him.
So, and the House, they PQ 50 times already in the House, right? So that's just normal in the House. But in the Senate, it's rare. You're not going to. How many PQs have we had within the last 10 years?
Probably. Okay, that's a very interesting question. From 2008 to 2014, there were 0. Yep. And then there's been 1 or 2 every year since.
About 8 or 9.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that.
So, but enough history lessons. I do want to talk about your political future. You have announced that you are going to run for Board of Aldermen president, which is an election that happens in the spring of next year.
And the incumbent, Lewis Reed, already is planning to run for re-election.
As well as Alderwoman Megan Green, who's in the 15th Ward. Your term doesn't end until 2020. So my question is, why have you decided to seek out this office that could potentially, if you win, short circuit your state legislative career?
Well, I think now more than ever before, we need strong leadership back home. And I believe that I'm that person. You know, I've been able to accomplish a lot on the state, on the House side as well as the Senate. And I've cultivated relationships that would serve the city well once I'm the president of the Board of Aldermen. Right now, we have a city, and I've talked about it before, the tales of two cities. When you go south of Delmar, all you see is development. You see Progress, Kia, Cortex. You see all of this great development going on. And then when you come north of Delmar, all you see is decay. All you hear about is hopelessness. And I don't believe a person that held a seat for 16 years, I've been on the president of the Board of Aldermen for 16 years, and North St. Louis looked the way it looks, even being one of the most powerful positions on the Board of E&A, I believe something's wrong there.
I believe Lewis Reed was first elected in 2007, so it would be about 12 years. But I understand your point.
As the president?
Yes.
He was an alderman before then, though.
Yes, he was.
Yes.
So what I'm saying to you is that here you have an African-American president of the Board of Aldermen, African-American on the Board of E&A, and ask yourself, why should St. Louis look like that? Why should North St. Louis look the way it looked? Apparently someone's been neglecting it in the most powerful positions. And so I truly believe at the end of the day that I will bring more to the table for not just North St. Louis, but for a better St. Louis.
Now, as most of our listeners know, St. Louis has a rather unusual governing system. In effect, the president of the Board of Aldermen has almost as much power as the mayor.
Especially when it comes to budgetary matters.
Yes, exactly, and the comptroller. So basically, it's a three-person board, the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, that basically governs the city on most major stuff, especially financial stuff. The reason I'm bringing this up is, if you're president of the Board of Aldermen, you're one vote on that three board. Have you been talking to Comptroller Darlene Green on what you'd like to be doing differently? What's your relationship with Mayor Lyda Crewson? Because it's one thing to advocate change, but you have to have at least one other backer on the Board of Estimate and Apportionment to get anywhere with it.
You know, I think that you need a leader. You know, you need someone that can lead, and you need someone that can be persuasive. You need someone that truly understands that so goes North St. Louis, so goes this whole city, okay? And that while it's okay to do development south of Delmar, if North St. Louis, if we continue to neglect North St. Louis in a manner in which we're neglecting North St. Louis, we're going to continue to lose big corporations. We're going to continue to have the highest murder rate in the country. We're going to continue to have individuals moving out of the city and not wanting to be here. We have to be able, you need someone that's going to be able to articulate the need for one St. Louis and not just give monies away to those individuals who want to come and do business in the St. Louis area without saying, hey, how will this impact not just the South area, but the whole city?
And I just want to let you know and let our listeners know that we're going to bring the Board of Aldermen president candidates back before the election and get a little bit more granular. I appreciate you coming on and saying what you're going to do from a philosophical standpoint.
But there is this timing factor because we've got this big midterm statewide election, which with the Senator McCaskill on the ballot, her likely opponent, Missouri Tenor Josh Hawley. Then you also have the state auditor is also on that. So you've got that election in November, and then right around, it's just a few months.
Yeah.
3 months?
Yeah.
Where the city election is. So if you're going to be doing a lot for McCaskill, how are you going to balance all this?
So what I'll do is right now, McCaskill race is very important, and what I want to be able to do is go throughout the city of St. Louis, and speak on her behalf. That way I'll continue to be visible, but I won't be pushing my own agenda. Mm-hmm. I'll be pushing Claire's agenda.
But after November 2018, it's all about Nasheed
it's all
agenda.
about Madam President Jamilah Nasheed.
Now I do want to ask though, and I want to get into a little future speculation. Let's say you do win in 2019. That means you would leave the Senate, and there would probably be a internal scramble to replace you. One of the interesting non-filings that occurred, I think a couple weeks ago, is State Representative Joshua Peters did not file for re-election for his House seat. He had been talked about as a possible successor to you, and now that appears not to be the case anymore. The other person I've heard who is interested in your seat is Representative Bruce Franks. Someone who I think you have cultivated a closer relationship with since he was elected, but you were a Penny Hubbard supporter for a long time. Would you be comfortable with someone like Representative Franks succeeding you in the Missouri Senate?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Bruce Franks, I've watched him over the last year or so, and he's grown drastically. This guy here, he knows how to get things done. When I'll tell you one thing, his first year there, the budget came to the floor. He literally put $6 million in the budget for
I think it was
summer jobs.
Yes,
for
he
Slate.
did. I was there.
$6 million, and that was an amendment. He wasn't even on the budget. Okay,
he's not on the budget committee.
Right, and so. I mean, that tells you that he can. That shows you there that he can be effective. Okay. I will be supporting Bruce for the Senate.
You will.
Yes.
That's news. Although it may not be news to other people, but
maybe
it might be.
But I'll be supporting Bruce for the Senate
if you get elected.
That's when I get elected.
Okay, but even if you, you're going to be term limited out in 2020. So people are already thinking about this right now. I don't know if anyone else. I assume other people will run for that seat because the 5th District has always been competitive. You took out an incumbent senator to become the 5th District
So this
senator.
will be the second incumbent I take out.
Well, we'll have to see. And as I said before, we will be having you on sooner than 3 years from now because we're going to bring you back right before the Board of Aldermen election. And we're
and in separate shows for her other
rivals. No debate?
No debate.
Well, that may be something else the station tries to push, but that's separate.
One thing we like to do with our shows when there's contested races for really important offices like this is we like to give the candidates separate opportunities to provide their specific vision, and you will get to join our illustrious 5-time Politically Speaking Club when you do that, which has only been achieved by 2 other people, Senator Scott Sifton and State Treasurer Eric Schmidt. So you'll be in a class all by yourself when that happens. The Honors Club. So how could people follow you on Twitter or any other parts of the World Wide Web?
Jamilah Nasheed. You can just go to Jamilah Nasheed, Google Jamilah Nasheed, and everything's come up. Everything will come up.
How would people follow you on Twitter, Joe?
Okay, it's J Mannies. That's JMANNIES.
You can follow me on Twitter at J Rosenbaum. Read all of our stories at stlpublicradio.org. And I'm Jason Rosenbaum. I'm telling everybody in St. Louis, Atchison County, Pemiscot County, and all over the world that you will succeed. Have a good week, everybody.
The Gateway brings you the day's news from the St. Louis region and across Missouri. It also includes stories from the Illinois side of the river and our Metro East reporter, Will Bauer.
In Alton, in Belleville, in East St. Louis, in Edwardsville, in Cahokia Heights, at Scott Air Force Base, I'm Will Bauer. St. Louis Public Radio.
Listen to reports from Will and all of our journalists weekdays on the Gateway, on the STLPR app, and wherever you get podcasts.